So in light of everything going on, I think it's really important right now that we share some great stories, some great local stories of what some incredible leaders are doing in their communities with their business and their teams. And today, I have an incredible pleasure of introducing a good friend of mine, a colleague, and more importantly, a client, Jessica Friesen. And Jessica is the owner of Gales Gas Bars Limited. 51 years in business, third generation business. And so, as you can imagine, Jessica is balancing not only tradition, history, and being Niagara's only independent fuel supplier, is still creating a business that provides an incredible value to her local community. And in working with Jessica, one of the things I appreciate about her is how she envisions the business as a whole. Recently, I've been really absorbing, as some of you know, Simon Sinek's new book, The Infinite Game. And when you work or talk with Jessica, this is what she does very well. She creates this long-term vision that's an infinite vision. This is where we're going in the long term. And she's always spoken that way. And to engage her team, she's created that vision. And then, of course, one of the original living wage providers in Niagara. So culture is very important to Jessica as well as team, creating a long-term vision so that by playing the infinite game, she's not like many business owners right now playing the finite reactionary game that doesn't do well for anybody in a short-term wins, but long-term is a bit of a loss. So welcome, Jessica, and I really thank you for taking time out of your day to kind of talk to us and share some of the things that you've been doing. Tell us a bit more about Gales and your family and your team and your business.
Hey, thanks, Neil. So I'm so excited to be here. First of all, thank you very much for having me on the show. You said 51 years. It's 53, actually. 53. So 1967 was when we were established officially. My grandfather started the company. He had been a distributor for Champion Oil. Yep. Purchased the very first property for Gales Gas Bars Limited at the corner of Thoroldstone Road in Montrose. And that was really the birth of the stations. Yep. He grew that through the 70s. My father came in the early 80s. My father really focused on the distribution side of things. So the hauling and furnace oil side, and he grew that through the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, wow. And I came in 2009 with the birth of the Bob's Fast and Fresh brand. Yes. And so that's our convenience store brand. Everyone is located on a Gales Gas Bars. Yep. And we are still doing the wholesale. We still do furnace oil. We still have that niche market in the community. Right. But the focus right now is really on growing the convenience stores, growing on the stations. Right. And of course, we're uber committed to Niagara and being a part of the community. And yeah. Thank you. We are the first living wage provider in the petroleum industry in Ontario. We might still be the only one. I'm not 100% on that, but very, very proud of that distinction. It's something that I felt was very important for my staff and for me to be able to support them in that way. Right. And so in a kind of Cole's Notes 2-minute version, that's our history.
And anybody in Niagara will recognize the famous red, yellow signs. But the thing that I've appreciated about you is how you have reinvested back into the business, and you realize that branding is so important, but also the service levels. And I remember working with your team on site where we're, hey, drive safe and have a great day. And that level of service that doesn't exist with some of the larger suppliers. So naturally, come March 2020, we're hit with the pandemic, and, suddenly everything is changing on a dime. Jessica, how has the pandemic affected you and your team?
So it was a significant hit in March. I'll never forget that day, March 13th, when everything, the world just kind of imploded, and we really didn't know what that meant. We didn't know what the trickle-down effect was going to be at that point. For the petroleum industry, it was instantaneous, and it was shocking to see how quickly it hit and how long it took to recover from that. And what I mean is the price of oil really tanked. it just, you know, really took a nosedive, and the retail price didn't necessarily follow as quickly as or sorry, the wholesale price didn't follow as quickly as the retail did. So that was challenging. You know, you're selling for less than what you're buying, which, you know, doesn't make any sense, but that's the way that it was for the first couple of weeks, and then we got out of that one. But more so the larger, the longer effects were staffing related, and were really with the procedures and the policies that we had in place. So each of our sites operate with one individual on most of the time. Our office, we have about 10 people in there, and we really had to look at what was the core of the business. We were an essential business. We are an essential business, which meant that we could stay open, but that was kind of a catch-22, because as much as we could stay open, the volume wasn't there to support having all of the sites open.
And your clientele still expects that full service, because you're one of the few places that still have that full service, you know, meet you at the drive-through kind of look. So keep going.
Absolutely. So what we had to do was really look at what is our core business now, after COVID. So you know, when are people out driving? Our fuel distribution side of things was it stayed pretty level as far as customers, but the volumes were down. So, you know, we're still going out as much as we had been before, making as many deliveries as we had been before. It's just lesser volumes. So that was one thing to deal with. But the sites themselves, we shut down 4 of our sites at the high point of this, and laid off 25% of the workforce. The sites that remained open, if they were open 24 hours, then they remained open 24 hours. If they were not a 24-hour site, then they were reduced to 12 hours, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. One shift a day. You know, because we had individuals that were choosing to take a layoff because they weren't comfortable. We had other individuals that we had to make the decision for them to lay off based on, you know, what site are they working at, what's their seniority, you know, that type of thing. It was a lot of hard decisions that were made very, very quickly. And it was something that was very fluid as well. We would make the decision based on the information that we had at that time. And then literally 24 hours later at times, we would have to change that decision because the information had changed and the requirements had changed. So, you know, it was a very fluid time where we were making just the best decisions that we possibly could at that moment in time, and hoping that it was the right decision.
And now with us being, you know, it's August, or September, you know, 5 months in, hitting into our 6 months, how has the team sustained? You've always built a great morale on your team. You've got an amazing culture. What's happening today after this period of time? What are you now seeing?
So once we kind of got staffing and hours of operation under control, we really looked at what should we be putting in place to keep our staff safe. And as much as I say that was the next thing to be done, this was all being done in conjunction with each other. It was all being done at the same time. So you know, automatically cleaning processes were put in place. Sneeze guards were put up at our self-serve locations. Hand sanitizer was provided immediately. Gloves for our staff. Masks for our staff. So now what we're looking at is really in the long term, what is the lasting effects of what this pandemic going to be, and how does that affect us? So what we've really been looking at for the last, say, 2-3 months is a lot of mental health, actually. How do we prepare our management team for what the front line is experiencing? How does the management team troubleshoot? And if we have an attendant or a clerk or one of our office staff that seems to be struggling, you know, what supports are out there? What can we provide for them? So we've really pivoted with how we're looking at things into a mental health thing,
Yeah.
a mental health view. And on top of that, we're looking at service excellence as well. So how do we, again, you know, service is always changing, and we're certainly not perfect with that. So we are now we're actually going to be doing a train the trainer type thing, and empowering one of my senior team to be able to provide the training to our front line on service excellence. You know, and just try to stay ahead of the curve as much as possible. So really trying to pay attention to what you know, what the doctors are saying, what the medical officer of health is saying, and what the countries that came before us, what they were experiencing, you know, a couple of months before Canada was.
Yeah, and you haven't become paralyzed or downward spiraled. You've kept that look outward and onward. So, you know, in a longer term perspective, this pandemic is a bump in the road. It's a pretty big bump. But I find those organizations that keep their eye on the bigger perspective, the longer term perspective, it helps to kind of keep those people engaged and motivated, and all the other things that you're doing as well.
It's important as a leader to always keep your eye on the prize. So what's the prize? Our prize is our vision. Our vision is fueling Niagara for the next 50 years. So what's going to get us to that 50-year mark? A pandemic, 50 years from now, I certainly probably won't be talking about it anymore. But, you know, whoever is in my shoes will be able to look back on my notes and back on what we did and say, hey, you know what, we weathered the pandemic of 2020. We became stronger for it. We reinforced our management team. We reinforced our front line. We reinvented ourselves, and we were able to pivot. And I think that's what's crucial, is being able to pivot in a time of adversity. This is a pandemic. You know, we've gone through gas wars. We've gone through volume problems, you know, like there's always some kind of a challenge. This one just happens to be something that's on a global level that everybody is being impacted by. But in day-to-day business, this is just another thing. So you know, yes, it's significant, it's huge, it's impacting everyone greatly. But if you don't pivot and you don't adapt and you don't learn from it, that's when you're not going to be around. And I'm very proud to say that we've done that well.
I've seen a lot of emphasis recently put on managers and frontline staff, but you're an executive, an owner, a CEO. How, you know, you're at home, your family, your daughter just dropped you off a tea, which is really cool. Like, how are you doing as an executive and an owner? Because those are the questions I'm getting now as executives. How do I lead from a distance?
So it's a little different for me because being an essential service, we have always been in the office. But that being said, we operate out of one office and we have 15 satellite sites. So this really brought to a head, you know, an issue that we had been discussing for many years, which is how do we engage the front line and really have them involved? Better communication is something that we are constantly struggling with and constantly working on. You know, it's one of those challenges that is never going to go away.
Well aware of that.
So yeah, that's why we know you, right? But so one of the things that I'm very proud to say we are doing is monthly town halls. So we have appointed a station leader. We had discussed this idea prior to COVID, and the constant thought was, well, can we really do it? Is it possible? You know, I don't know how many people can do it via you know, remote, how many people can get into the office. Then all of a sudden the pandemic hit and everyone is going remote. And it was really eye-opening because it showed us it's absolutely possible to do this. It's absolutely possible to do it remotely. And now monthly we have these town halls, and we have one frontline staff from every site that gets on a Zoom call, and they have the entire senior team. And we have an agenda. They bring you know, their concerns from the sites. It's absolutely fantastic. And I got to tell you, Neil, and you know me, you know, I was at the first town hall meeting, and the idea was, okay, Jess, you know, you're going to come for the first town hall meeting, and then my ops manager and my HR manager going to take it from there. And I would kind of be, you know, back in the office. And afterwards, I walked right into my HR manager's, Kim's office. And I said, oh, no, I'm going to be there because this was just fantastic. It was so empowering. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
You know, it was great to see. It was great. You could feel the vibe even on Zoom. Everybody was so excited to be able to have that kind of a conversation and to talk with me and really get the answers from the person that's making those decisions. There was such a benefit to it that we are a stronger company now because of it. And that is exciting.
That's great news. Any advice? Like, what advice would you share? There's managers looking at this, owners.
Yeah, you know what? The way that you run your business today may not be the way that you run your business tomorrow or next year or a decade from now. You have to be open to pivoting. You have to be open to adapting, and never ever close a door, because you never know if that's going to be a viable option in the future. And it's exciting. Challenges are why we got into business. You know, the entrepreneurs, business people, we are the ones that constantly want to be challenged. We like the challenge. We thrive from it.
We're weirdos.
You know, sometimes we're gluttons for punishment, right? Like, I'm not saying that I've enjoyed the pandemic by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm very proud of my team. I'm very proud of my company. We pivoted, we adjusted, we are stronger for it. And, you know, we're just going to keep going. And that is what empowers me.
Wow. Well, you know, thank you so much. That's the first thing I got to say to you. I admire the way you, your intention towards your team, your leadership, your vision. You know, I think more people need to hear this story. And that's my ultimate goal by doing these is just giving people a lens that we're not alone in this. Even as entrepreneurs, but even business people as a whole, everyone right now is looking for some good news and just some things that we can do to stand out. I always reference a great book by Tom Peters, Reimagine. If you don't like change, you'll like irrelevancy even less. And, you know, people giggle when I say that, but it's so true. Change right now is so fast. We need vision, we need teams, we need urgency. And I think I know that's all three of what you have. And you understand that your culture is as important, if not more important, than your strategy and even your vision. So I want to thank you, Jessica, for taking time out of your schedule. You're pretty big, and you're working hard. Like, well, congrats.
Well, I've got a good team, so that's that they make it easy. So thank you for the opportunity. It's been great to see you.
Stay on. Hang on a sec.